Hi, I'm Hannah. I am an intern at All Saints Exhall, and as you know, I'm doing a placement at St Gabriel's, and I'm really excited to share some of my faith story with you. I would love to share all my stories with you, but I think it would take a little bit longer than the 4 minutes that I'm allowed. I doubt that I'll even fit it into 4 minutes. So, but first, a little bit about me. I've lived at the top of Greystones Road for all of my life. I was born there. And I was also born into a Christian family, so I've always been to church my whole life. And even though I'm in the catchment for Greystones, we've always had links with All Saints. And I suppose that my faith went through its own ups and downs for the first time, really, in my teenage years, as leaders came and they went and moved on. And it was there that I felt that I had to make the decision that I was going to follow God for myself. I saw that the church and leadership and the world around me would always be changing in some way. And so I couldn't rely solely on the impact of one leader or the place that I lived or what church looked like on a whole. I had to make the decision that I was going to follow God. And so a couple of years later, I went off to university, and I had a really great time to start with up in Newcastle. But in my second year, some really horrible things happened, and I found myself in a really dark place. I was isolated and I was alone, and I'd completely given up. And I described myself as being in quite a deep fog, basically. My faith was probably still there somewhere, but I wasn't in a place to be thinking about anything, let alone God. After a crisis point, I came back to Sheffield, and the fog took a while to lift, but when I look back, I see that God was actually working in my day-to-day steps. He put people in my life to pray over me. He put people in my life that would show me that kind of Jesus-modelled sort of love. He also provided for me with therapy and medical help. And it was such a journey, but God worked so incredibly in that process of therapy sessions in particular that I saw slowly but surely I was moving forward. What then happened was a real time of waiting. I'd gotten a job at Starbucks and I was back living at home with my parents. I'd got half a degree and no real aspirations. I'd been learning to love life again and I'd recommitted to God, but I also didn't have a clue about what I was going to do next or even what my life was just going to look like in general. But these few years, as I quickly learned, God wasn't teaching me about what was next or what my life was going to look like. He was teaching me not to have a plan. He was teaching me to trust him in every step, and trusting in the mundane and pretty boring days, because at some point it was going to change and those days were going to be worth it. A lot of time was also about a reset in the control I felt I needed in my life, the control that had actually made me pretty ill to begin with. And it was hard. I didn't like letting up control, but God did provide, and God did keep the promises, and God was and is still good. So out of these particular experiences, very quickly, there are two things that I've learned and grown through most that I want to share with you. The first is that faith isn't just one decision, one day, and that's it. I've had to recommit over and over, sometimes on a daily basis, that I'm for God and that I'm trusting him. I suspect that this will probably be the case for the rest of my life too, but it is a continual decision that I will choose to make. And the second is that God provides even when we can't see him. Fogs, unfortunately, will come and go, and they will look different for each of us. But God is constant. He is for us constantly. And that means that we can trust him, fog or no fog. I've gone a little bit over time, but that's okay. So I hope that these experiences in my life relate to you on some level, but if there is one thing that I want you to take away from this, is that I believe through what I've experienced that God is good and that God is for you. Cool.